Well, when I heard Pat wasn't going to be here like 2 days ago, and he asked me if I would come and do this, I was trying to think about what I would do, and I had no idea about the hurricane. But I thought I'd just sort of tell you a story about a cool time that I had, and maybe we can pull stuff out from it. And so I decided to call this Lessons from a Camping Trip, or, there we go, 5 men, 6 boys, and an air-conditioned tent. I was in a small group for a long time. Some of you know my story, and really a small group of men saved my marriage and in many ways sort of saved my life as I know it. So I was in this small group with these guys. All of us were about the same age, and we all had sons. And so we decided that we would take our sons camping. We thought that would be good, and we'd all read Wild at Heart, and we thought some really cool, rite of passage thing would be fun. And so we decided to take our boys camping. And for the rite of passage, I thought it would be really cool to give the boys knives. I thought that'd be something they would remember. The only problem was all of our boys were like between the ages of 4 and 8. So I got overruled, and we decided to give the boys flashlights. And I was going to bring one this morning, but I couldn't find any batteries that fit it. So it was a joke. So we decided to give the boys flashlights. Now, I was really excited about this camping trip. My son Jackson was 6 at the time, and I had begun to feel just this little twinge of disconnection from him. Now, I know he's 6, so how can you feel disconnected from your 6-year-old? But I did. I just felt this sort of sense of disquiet, that we just weren't connecting the way that we were normally connected. And I didn't want to wake up one day and wonder why my 15-year-old hated me. You know what I mean? So I thought, I'm gonna get on this now. I asked the table leaders, actually from the Bible study, to pray for me at the time, and so we decided to go on this camping trip. And so I thought this camping trip would be a great opportunity just to get some one-on-one time with Jackson and to connect with him. So we decided we'd go away. Now we decided we would go away Father's Day weekend, and each of us took a job. One guy found the campground to go to. Another guy planned all the food. I had the entertainment portion of the event, so I brought along a little TV and a guy movie. I think I brought along Patriot, Braveheart, and Gladiator. The 3 all-time guy movies. And we had a camper that we could plug it into, so I packed some cigars for us to smoke at night when the boys were asleep, and so I was the entertainment director, and so we're all ready to go. Now, there's one problem. This is June. June in Florida is hot. So that's where the air-conditioned tent comes in. One of our guys owns I don't know if you've heard of Serve Pro franchise. They do these, once your house is flooded, they'll come in and pull the carpets up and dry everything out. And so he had this air conditioner that's about this big square and about this tall, and it's a self-contained air conditioner. So we figured with an air conditioner and, those ducts you have on the back of your dryer that go to the vents and some duct tape, we could air condition a tent. So we packed all the stuff up. We had 2 SUVs. We had a camper. We had this big old rusty trailer. We threw bikes in it and food and camping gear and put a big brown tarp on it. And as we pulled away, my wife said, "You guys look like the Beverly Hillbillies going to the Eco Challenge." And so we're driving down the road. And on the way there, we had the first the first experience of the weekend where my son did something that he had never done before. My son at the time was 6, and I have a daughter who's a couple years older than him, and my daughter and I, our personalities are dead spot on. I mean, we're adventurous and out there, and my son is a little bit more reserved. He's a little bit more laid back. Frank, a little bit more comfortable in his own skin. He's the kind of kid that you'll lose for a little while, and you'll find him playing by himself for an hour, and he's fine with that. He doesn't mind. He's good. And but also a little bit more cautious, and when he was 6, he was a little clingy, and we're halfway there, and he's got to go to the bathroom. And we're a bunch of guys, so we did what guys do. We pulled over on the side of the road. Well, he was not happy about this at all. It did not have a door that he closed behind him, and it was not white and porcelain. And, I said, "Buddy, you can't miss, People might see me." I said, so I did what a good dad does. Pardon me, but I just unzipped right next to him and showed him how to do it, and so we had that experience. That was our first first bonding experience of our camping trip. And so we got there and we hooked the air conditioner up and we got the duct tape and the duct and we're strapping stuff up and it was really cool. And so I said, hey buddy, you and I'll sleep in the tent with this other dad and his 2 boys, and then everybody else can sleep in the camper. And he would have much preferred to sleep in the camper, but somehow I talked him into sleeping in the tent. And so we set this thing up. The first night, we turned this thing on, and we came out the next morning, and we couldn't figure out why we were sweating so much. And then we found out that the fan and the condenser had 2 different on and off switches. So we'd been blowing hot air into that tent all night long. And so the next night we got the condenser on, and then we froze the next night. But anyway, when we get there, there's this swimming hole, this little pond. And man, this thing is so hot it feels like bath water. In fact, the kids were wondering if it was a heated outdoor swimming hole. I told them they didn't really do that. Didn't need to in Florida. And we all changed in our bathing suits and we jumped into the swimming hole. And the next thing I know, these couple of the dads are taking these boys and they are flinging them through the air. And they're screaming and splashing and coming up sputtering for air and swimming back. And so I look at Jackson and I'm like, all right, buddy, you want me to throw you in the water? And he's, no. I don't really want to do that, Dad. And I understood that. He wasn't really comfortable swimming yet. And so I said, all right, well, I'll just stay with you here in the shallow water. It's about up to my knees. And so we had this kind of weird thing. There's Jackson and me and then a younger boy. And then all these other dads a little bit farther offshore throwing their boys into the water. And laughing and screaming, and my son just happy as can be, sort of tooling back and forth in 2 feet of water. And so then he came up to me and he said, hey, Dad, I think I want you to throw me in the water. I said, yes. And I said, all right, let's go. He said, no, I don't want to go anywhere. I want you to do it right here. So I was like 2 feet of water, so I've got to contain my enthusiasm at this point, So I'm like, all right. And he says, no, I don't want you to throw me away from the shore. I don't even want to throw me sideways to shore. I want you to throw me towards shore. So I'm like, all right. So, whee! Do it again, Dad. Do it again. So for about 15 minutes, I'm like pushing him. It's not even throwing him, And next time we went swimming, he said, all right, Dad, this time I want you to throw me sideways to shore. Throw me sideways to shore. So now, getting a little bit more, I'm sort of inching out a little bit farther, and then he'd catch me. Dad, you're getting in the deep water. Oh, okay, son. So I come back into the shallower water, and I'm pushing him sideways. Now I'm actually getting him out of the water, like this much. And 30 inches of water. I probably shouldn't have come out of it any farther than that anyway, but he's coming out of the water. And so I just had this interesting experience of feeling like I just wanted my son to enjoy what everybody else was enjoying, flying through the air, screaming, laughing. And he didn't want to do that. He just wanted to do this sideways thing. So that was all right. Well, the last night there, we had a campfire. And this is when we're going to do our little rite of passage thing. So we pulled these flashlights out. And each of the fathers said something around the campfire to the boys with these flashlights. And we told them the flashlights were supposed to serve 2 purposes. And the first purpose was, we got a really nice little mini mag light flashlights. Nice, solid, indestructible flashlights, which my son broke in about 2 weeks. But these nice flashlights. And we told them we wanted them to remember this camping trip, remember this weekend that we had just as men camping. And so they liked that. And then we said, the other thing that we want you to think about whenever you look at this flashlight is we want you to remember your relationship with God. Because there's going to be times in your life when you feel like you don't know what to do, when times kind of seem dark. And this flashlight will remind you that Jesus is the light of the world. And this flashlight will remind you that God's Word can be a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path. So we want you to remember that. That's why we're giving you this flashlight. And they're really into it, man. They're like, okay, can you get the beef jerky out? But I think it got through to them a little bit. I think they remember that. My son still pulls that flashlight out, and we talk about it. Well, one of the activities that we did on this camping trip was this thing called geocaching. And if you've got kids of any age, or if you are a kid at heart, this thing, geocaching, is pretty cool. What you do is you look up on the website, geocaching.com, and you tell them where you're going, and they will tell you where there are these caches hidden. And a cache is basically a Tupperware container, or somebody used an ammo box for one of them that I saw. And in the cache, they put toys and stuff and a log. And they give you the latitude and longitude of the location of the cache. And then you buy one of these little handheld GPS deals, and you put in the coordinates for where you're going to go, and you go try to find this cache. They had these caches in the coolest places. One was sort of off in the woods, just sort of tucked under a tree. And one was actually in the pond, in a thermos that had been anchored to the bottom of the pond, and we sort of had to go find it. And so by going to this website, we were able to find there were 3 caches in this park that we were going to. And so we were going to go find these caches. Well, right before we were going to go find the first cache that's in the woods, Jackson decided he didn't want to go. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. We talked about it as a scavenger hunt, because they figured they understood that a little bit better, and he'd been really excited about it. And I said, I don't understand, buddy, what's going on? I just don't want to go, Dad. And I said, buddy, everybody's going. You know, we got to go to this. And he started crying. And so I said, you know, come on, buddy, suck it up. No, I thought that. But I said, you know, what is the deal? What's going on, buddy? Just tell me. We'll work through it. And he said, I'm scared of going into the woods. I don't want to go into the woods. I'm scared. And, you know, now I'm like, I had no fear. I had no comprehension of what he was afraid of. I just couldn't figure it out. But luckily, God's grace happened. And I said to him, well, do you want to go on the scavenger hunt? He said, yeah, Dad, I really want to go. I said, but you're scared of going into the woods. He said, yeah, I'm really scared of going into the woods. And I said, well, then, buddy, I want you to think about something. It's okay to be scared, but don't let your fear keep you from doing something that you really want to do. And he stops crying, and he looks at me, and he says, what? And I said, it's okay to be scared, but don't let your fear keep you from doing what you want to do. Buddy, there's going to be lots of things that you're afraid of in life, and lots of things that Daddy's afraid of, but you just got to do them. And especially if you want to do them, you'll find on the other side that the fear actually helped you do it. And it'll help you enjoy it that much more. And I said, and I'm going to be with you right the whole way. I will hold your hand, and we will go into the woods together. And so he sort of wiped his eyes off and said, all right, Dad, let's go. And so we headed off into the woods. Well, when it finally happened, I was a spectator. The last morning, we decided we'd go down to the swimming hole one more time. And we charged out into the water, and we're doing our thing. And in the blink of an eye, I looked around, and Jackson was gone. And I look over, and there in the deep water is my buddy Kevin. And as I watched him, my son swam up to him. And Kevin looked at him, and he said, hey, Jackson, you want me to throw you in the water? And Jackson said, yeah. And he picked him up, and he threw him, axle over tea kettle, 8, 10 feet in the air, 20, 30 feet in the air, okay, 3 feet in the air. And he hit the water, and I'm waiting, you know, and he popped right back up to the surface, sort of sputtering and losing his bearings and scared. And he swam over to me, and he said, Dad, did you see me? And I said, yeah, buddy, that was awesome. I can't believe you did that. That was so cool. I said, were you scared? And you know what he said to me? He said, yeah. But I didn't let my fear keep me from doing something I really wanted to do. And I went. God taught me a lot of stuff on that camping trip. And on your notes, you've got a little thing there, and I'm going to use that little structure to show you 4 or 5 things. And I call these sort of the 4 tasks of an engaged dad. The first one is to engage. When I felt that twinge of disconnection from Jackson, it was important not to ignore it. It was really important not to ignore it. We often, I think, as dads, we often feel things like this, and we sort of write it off. Well, I'm tired. Well, they're tired. School is rough. Work is rough. There's lots of stuff going on. Blah, blah, blah. We think of any excuse that we can not to go and pursue our kids. And it's so important as dads that we engage, that we go after our kids. You've heard of that transmission shops commercial, right? You can pay me now or you can pay me later. Well, this is one of those things. When you're tired and you're feeling disconnected, if you don't take care of it now, which is hard because you got to push through it sometimes to really engage your kids, you will pay later. You will wake up and wonder why your 15-year-old son doesn't like you very much. I think of Adam and Eve in the garden in Genesis 3, 7, 8, and 9. In verse 7 is sort of the end of the story of them sinning. And then in verse 8, God walks through the garden. I mean, they mess up, God comes looking for them right away. And I think, he didn't really give him any cooling down period there. It's the next verse later, he's there looking for him. And I think that's important for us as parents, especially when our kids mess up, that we go after them. And all through the Bible, you see stories of God pursuing his children, and pursued Paul, blinded him for a while. Balaam's donkey, all these different ways that God goes after us, and we need to go after our kids too. The second thing is to get down. To get down. What I mean by this is to get down to the level that our kids are at. I could have sat my son down, my 6-year-old son down, and said, Jackson, son, I'm feeling a little bit disconnected from you. And he would have looked at me and said something like, well, Dad, we're connected. And I would have said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, okay, you're sitting there on the couch, and your skin is touching your pants, and your pants is touching the couch, and the couch is touching the floor, and the floor is touching your shoes, and your shoes are touching your socks, and your socks are touching your feet, my feet, and my feet are touching me. So we're connected. Because to a 6-year-old, that's connected, right? And I would have said, no, son, I don't mean like physically connected. I mean, sort of in a spiritual and emotional sense, I feel disconnected from you. And he probably would have looked up to me and said, Dad, you're crazy. Can we talk about my new Captain Underpants book? So we have to get down to where our kid's at. When I think of coaching, that's the relationship with our kids. And you don't coach a kid where you want him to be. You coach him where he's at. In John 1, verse 14, John says that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Jesus came down and became one of us. And then in Philippians 2, 6, and 7, he says that Jesus didn't count equality with God something to be grasped. He didn't have to maintain all the powers of being God, but instead became like us, became just like us. Can you imagine having all that power and all that knowledge and everything that it means to be God, and just sort of setting that aside for a while just because you love somebody so much that you want to go save them? And so it's important for us as parents to get down. Thirdly, prepare to be a spectator. I didn't get to throw him in the water. When the time came, when the moment of glory came, I didn't get to throw him in the water. And when you're a football coach or a Little League coach, you don't get to get out on the field with them. You show them everything you can in practice, but then when game time comes, they got to do it on their own. And oftentimes, we're a spectator. This is a biblical principle, too, that in John 4, after Jesus talked to the Samaritan woman at the well, People sort of end the story there. Well, the Bible next says that they stayed there for a few days and ministered to the Samaritans. And the disciples didn't get it. They were like, well, how can we minister to the Samaritans? We've never even talked to them before. They don't even know who we are. How can we possibly minister to them? And Jesus looks at them and he says, you just went into town and bought food. You didn't grow the food, but we're still eating it. Well, it's the same with the Samaritans here. You didn't sow, but you're going to reap. You don't know the years that went into preparing the Samaritans for the Messiah to come, but you're going to reap the benefits of that. And so I think as parents, we do that all the time. We sow the seeds of future success, of material success, of emotional success, of spiritual success in our kids. And we don't often get to reap the rewards of that. We get to watch. But nevertheless, we sow. And finally, it's quantity and quality. I hear a lot of times, I hear a guy saying, well, I got to travel a lot for business and I'm not really home very much. But man, when I'm home, I'm with my kids. It's quality time. And I go, you know what? That's just a crock. That's just a crock. Because kids learn more by watching you do what you do than by listening to you tell them to do what they're supposed to do. And so a boy who doesn't spend very much time with his dad, but when he does, they do great stuff, well, he'll learn to not spend very much time with his son. So how do you do this? Well, I think this is the key. Pat says this sometimes about marriages, but it's true in parenting too. And that is that the relationship is the task. The relationship is the task. And so here's 3 practical things to think about. One, find out what their interests are. My daughter's 10 now, and she plays soccer. And I was a football player growing up. I sort of made fun of the soccer players, actually, because the seasons collided. But my daughter loves to play soccer. So I became the assistant coach on her soccer team a couple seasons ago. Now, not because I really love soccer, but because I wanted to spend time with my daughter. And so I've gotten this fantastic opportunity to spend like 5 or 6 hours a week to be on the soccer field with my daughter. It's been a wonderful opportunity. And plus, I really like winning, and we win a lot. So, figure out what your kids like. Does your daughter love movies? Well, go find a video camera at a pawn shop and start shooting your own movies. Maybe take a film class together, a night class together at a local community college, just to spend time together. Does your son like the outdoors? Put him in Boy Scouts and become the den leader. Do your kids want to learn how to golf? Golf is a great way to spend time with your kids because you're sort of stuck on a cart chasing balls all around, especially when you're playing with kids. You could spend 8-10 hours just trying to get through one round of golf together. Secondly, make different decisions. Make different decisions. If your kids had to choose between having more of you or a nicer house, they would pick more of you. If your kids had to pick between a new leased minivan every 2 years or having their parents involved in their lives and coming to their sporting events and to their recitals and taking family vacations together, I really think they wouldn't mind riding around in the 7-year-old minivan. And so, as men especially, it's important that we make the decisions that we need to make that will allow us to spend the time with our kids. And then third, bribery. Bribery. I really suggest bribery. Let me put it to you a different way. Would you spend a couple bucks to have half hour, 45 minutes of one-on-one time with your kids? You probably would. It's called a milkshake. Go buy one. My son does not like Home Depot, but I can get him to go to Home Depot on Saturdays and get an hour and a half with them because they have a hot dog stand outside. And we've had some pretty profound conversations with our mouths full of hot dog. And also, it sort of gives us some of those good memories of things to talk about. Well, These are the 4 tasks of an engaged dad then. To engage, to go after them, to pursue them, to get down, to be at their level, to talk to them at the level that they're at, to prepare to be a spectator after you've done all the work. Oftentimes, somebody else reaps the benefits. And to remember that it's quantity and quality. And all of those things really show you how the relationship is the task. Which brings us to our big idea. That teachable moments are like the common cold. You have to be close to catch them. Teachable moments are like the common cold. You have to be close to catch them. And really, in the end, all of these things that we want to do with our kids, they are ways of creating teachable moments for them. If I hadn't been sitting on the log on the camping trip, I never would have been able to say to my son, it's okay to be scared, but don't let your fear keep you from doing what you want to do. Final story. I took my son to a Cub Scout meeting orientation this week. And we got about 10 minutes of time, and then they said, all right, all the boys are going to go in the other room, and they got some games over in the other room. And so I'm there with my son. He doesn't know any other, I think he knew one of the other boys that was in the room, but there's like 20 boys that are going to go in the other room, and some sisters and stuff like that. And do you know what my son did? Bye, Dad. Out of the room. I got to tell you, he's 8 now. My 6-year-old son, or he's 7 now, my 6-year-old son never would have done that. Because he would have been scared. He wouldn't have known what was coming. Now, is it because I sat at the campground at that exact time and gave him that saying? No, of course not. But that was part of a process, and really the beginning of a process. Because I can go back to that time, and from that time forward, I can see my son being more and more adventurous, more and more brave, and willing to jump into new things and try new things. And it started because of that teachable moment that we had. And so I would encourage you. Now, I'm looking around, and I got to tell you, I see some gray hair in the room. I'm just going to state the obvious, all right? So some of you are going, well, that's great, but what does that have to do with me? Well, let me tell you 2 things. First of all, if you've got kids who have kids, they need to know this. And plus, this works for grandpas too. You know how I know that? Because my kid's grandfather's sitting right over there. He can wave. And those 4 tasks that I told you, engage, get down, prepare to be a spectator, and it's quantity, not quality, and quality, he did those things when I was growing up, and now he's doing those things with my kids. So you can do this with your grandkids. And secondly, we need to mentor this new generation of dads that are coming up. There's a whole generation of dads right now, not your kids, but other people's kids. There's a whole generation of dads right now. Half of the guys that are having kids right now grew up in a broken home. Think about that. Half of the guys that are having kids right now experienced a broken home when they were growing up. So nobody did those things. So it's up to us, especially us as the church, not as a church, but as the church, to come alongside those guys and mentor them and help them to break that cycle. And I think if we can teach them these 4 tasks, we'll help them break that cycle. Let's pray. Father, you find teachable moments for us. There's many times when we're in the midst of a situation and the Holy Spirit speaks into our hearts and into our minds and shows us the depth of your love and shows us your wisdom and your direction. And Father, I pray that for all these guys here that have kids, that they would be sensitive, be aware of those teachable moments, that they would take advantage of them, that they would do the things they need to do to create many, many more opportunities for there to be teachable moments. And for those of us here, Father, who don't have young children of our own right now, that we would find other men to shepherd and to disciple, that we would find other children to mentor, to show them your love and your grace, Father, and your wisdom. We pray all this in your name, Father. Amen.